Hey, everybody. So good to see you guys. It's Kevin and it's Thea from the Remote Care Services Show. If you haven't joined RPH Ally, join because Thea has all kinds of awesome stuff in the Remote Care Services channel. She's doing incredible things in consulting and she's doing awesome things in education. So get to learn more. The thing we're going to educate you guys on today is maybe something Thea and I need some education on because I got some updates of recent on pharmacist provider status, Thea. And so you and I will jump into some perspectives we've gained and some conversations we've had with everybody to get everybody else up to date. Talk to you soon. Thea, how have you been? I feel like it's been way too long since I've seen your face.
I know it's only been a week, but it feels like forever. All good here, just trying to get the kids ready to go back to school. We don't start school until next week. So next Wednesday, they'll be back in and working in the home office will get a little bit quieter, I think. Yay.
Well, I can only imagine. I saw a couple people's posts on LinkedIn that said, really busy summer, hanging out with family, which is wonderful. And now my brain's on fire to start, back into the business space again, or start with my job, whatever the case is, on a different level, which I think is fantastic. We've Thea actually been about 2 miles away from evacuation because there are fires up in the Northwest, and one is just right next door to me. And so prayers and thoughts go out to everybody impacted by some of the hurricanes and weather going on and all the fires going around, because it's not a whole lot of fun. So I was asked the other day, Kevin, what have you been up to? And I was thinking, well, looking at my phone way too often and seeing if there's going to be a fire coming at my house is probably the real truth. But, in general, trying to segue here, when it comes to a fire coming at our house, I feel like it's been the opposite for pharmacists for a long time, Thea. We've always wanted to get on fire about a provider status. And then it seems like something goes in for a bill and then nothing happens. It gets dropped. It goes away. It's too expensive. It gets stymied by maybe another healthcare organization that says we don't want pharmacists to be scope creeping. All those things happen, and it takes away from really a big push for patient care. Let's start here, Thea. How has that made you feel over the years as a pharmacist and wanting to be a clinical provider for your patients? Not saying that all pharmacists aren't clinical. That is not where Thea and I are going here, but just wanting to do more things along patient care.
Yeah, I think it was funny because I did tell a state organization that I might as well wipe my butt with my state license because they're holding me back from doing the care that I know how to deliver upon. And it's not up to the state to tell me how I should be able to deliver my knowledge in a way that is wanted by patients without dispensing something. And so I really did say that to the state organization, and I might be on their short list. I'm not getting a Christmas card since that statement, but here we are. Sometimes you just got to take the bull by the horns, and we get in there and just do that. But no, really, I feel like we have been taken, the silos of healthcare have all shifted around, but they haven't came down to see what pharmacists can actually do. And when we, we're tasked throughout COVID to step up and we delivered, and it's still a problem of those silos being very, very tight and strong in the healthcare organization about this is what a physician does, this is what a nurse does, this is what a pharmacist can do, and there's no overlap. And I find that then they don't know what pharmacists are really doing. They don't know what nurses are really doing, and physicians the same. I feel like, yes, we have a model, we stay around, but I don't think everyone colors in that same line. And when we do, patients lose.
What are the productivity metrics, Thea, since you're a hospital pharmacist, retail pharmacist, clinic pharmacist, everything in between? What are the productivity metrics or measures that you've been held to previously? What do you feel like administration is doing to evaluate pharmacists right now?
I would say a lot of it comes down to, can you make money? Let's start with the money part, right? Are pharmacists going to make you money? Well, you and I both know, Kevin, that in a health system, you don't make money as a pharmacist. There's no line item on the end budget that says pharmacist made money. There's nothing there. And so when you can show up and say that I am a pharmacist and I know how to make money and generate revenue for organizations like a health system or even a physician office, or a pharmacy, even for that matter, it doesn't matter location, you have the opportunity to make a line item and make a difference in a patient's life. So you're making revenue, you're now compensating for some of the costs that it takes for a pharmacist knowledge to be in place, but patient satisfaction is coming out on the other end way more than what the cost would have generated or could have generated. The patient satisfaction scores matter more.
They do. It's so interesting that you say that, because most times, like when you're talking about how is a pharmacist being evaluated, the metric is RXs, right? I mean,
Yeah.
just how many scripts are you pushing across the table? In other words, like how are we tying the margin of the individual prescription or the billable of the prescription if you're in a critical access setting where it's cost, like at cost, or if you're in a DRG setting, or if you're in a fee for service setting, that you're having a margin, placed on those individual prescriptions. That is how most pharmacists are being evaluated. There are lots of attune organizations that are trying to grab in additional metrics on clinical interventions and things of that nature to be able to pull themselves into DRG spaces or star metrics or HEDIS or whatever the case may be. I think that has to be done to a little more tactical level. And interestingly, you and I were just talking the other day about a study looking at a PMPM, a per member per month evaluation. And so this study really looked at an interesting element of how can pharmacist interventions decrease the cost burden for a payer on a per member per month basis. And I think when it comes to evaluating pharmacists moving forward, like that's going to be the new thing in the back of Kevin's mind, right? Is how can we affect the PMPM, model? The reason being, Thea, we're shifting away from a fee for service world into a full risk world. I was just talking to Chad from ASCP just a little while ago about that exact same thing, and told him that I feel like it's going to be a 10-pound hammer dropped on our entire profession that, oh, wow, when did we go over here when a lot of the things that we were doing and being measured no longer matter, because we're basing it entirely upon readmission rates, maybe a few quality metrics, but really putting the entire impetus of care in the hands of the providers to be able to decrease costs. So anyway, the reason I asked that is because that's a metric being evaluated. That's the same way that the Senate and government bodies evaluate pharmacists. How much are they going to cost us to be able to deploy these kinds of healthcare metrics or changes in services across a really broad, like customer base, client base, patient base? And so when we start talking about pharmacists are going to be providers, the one thing that comes to their mind is how much is that going to cost us? If we add on that status and we see the percentage of pharmacists that are going to do these jobs, right? And so I think there's a really interesting piece there if we talk about where are we today, Thea, because talking to the folks out there, ECAPS is the closest that we've been to getting any type of provider status so far. And so with ECAPS, and ECAPS in particular is the Equitable Community Access to Pharmacist Services Act. And so that act is being kind of pushed forward, and it looks like every major pharmacy organization is backing it. In a really interesting way, I think that I've personally underestimated it. Reason is because it seems rather limited. It's access to care, yes, but the care that's having access is particularly related to testing of COVID, flu, RSV, and strep throat, treatment of COVID, flu, strep throat, RSV, and then vaccinations for COVID, flu, pneumococcal, and hepatitis B. So to me, like having that very limited scope doesn't sound that exciting from a guy from Washington with Idaho right next door to me, because we've been pushing that envelope for a really long time in the Northwest. But the one thing that I think is fascinating about it is we have struggled mightily to get anything across the line, Thea, like you and I know, when it comes to provider status, we've got physical therapists that have provider status. We've got all the other MDDO, mid-level, et cetera, all the way down that have varying levels, but they've gotten their foot in the door. And I think for me, that's the way that I've pivoted my mind after talking to Chad and some other leaders is a really wonderful way for us to say, we did an incredible job during the pandemic of being able to deliver something to the nation as a whole. That's something we should be trusted with moving forward. And we should have a provider status level to be able to take care of the needs of our patients. Does that mean we're going to be able to do more? I don't know. But at least it means we can do something. And then from there, we can see what other elements are kind of put in play. Thoughts, Thea, on that kind of logic?
Yeah, I think any way you can open the door a sliver, you can add leverage by lots of different avenues, right? And a lot of different organizations can add leverage to that opening. But the hardest part is getting that opening in. And I think ECAPS is exactly that. I think it is our open to the Senate and to the Congress and to, just CMS at large that says, we're here, we're helping, and it doesn't look like we're doing a lot, but we can do more if you allow us to get compensated for our time and pay us accordingly. We're not asking to diagnose. We're not asking to do the physician's job. We're just trying to care for the patients, because the patients find us when they need care. They come to us. What is it? The 93% of the nation is within 5 miles of a pharmacy. Like, that's telling you something. Like, people know where we are. They know how to come to us. You don't need an appointment to come to my pharmacy counter. So
Right.
let us in on just a little bit, and we'll keep showing your value. Like, that's who we are. That's what we do, is we keep offering value even though we're not getting paid for it today. How many pharmacists are getting paid for it and they're still going to work every day and doing the same work? So I think it's a way to take the little sliver of opening that we have and now allow other organizations to come in and really showcase what we have been doing in the background that no one has gotten recognition for yet, but really add leverage to that opening and really use some physics to our benefit here to open that door up quickly.
Yeah, I think that's beautifully said. I think the interesting thing when it comes to the leverage like element, the other spot to talk about is something you and I have talked about several times is how do we share data amongst each other? I know that Jaron Stout, I need to get together with you, Jaron. I love you, Jaron, by the way. But he's doing an incredible job of trying to push the envelope. But one thing that I know that he needs is data to come back. And I know Jenna Quinn has been very open with, hey, I'm willing to share my data on how I'm building my business. You've been very open with saying, I'm willing to share my data with how pharmacists are changing the landscape of remote patient monitoring and chronic care management. But how do we find a way to start pooling these things together, Thea? Because I feel like we're once again working in little silos of Thea is trying to chip away at the ice and be able to say, hey, managed care organization, or hey, ACO, or hey, individual payer, I'm willing to do this work at risk with these metrics being measured. And then I make one difference. But then nobody else does, right? No one
Yeah.
else is able to follow those Thea footsteps to do it in their neck of the woods or expand it. How do you think we change that?
That's a really tough question, because you're going against electronic health records that aren't all one national electronic health records. You're going against the data that's collected for the different softwares based on service models. I mean, it's all out there, but I don't know how to get that done. I think continuing to be open and be talking about it at organizational levels should be able to help get us teams together to be able to pool things together and network it and be able to get more folks in on, this is the information that we've been able to gather. Now let's take it on. And I think Jaron is doing a great job there with the coalition that he's forming around just being able to take stuff to CMS, and being able to do that work. I think it's just sharing it maybe internally with the groups that we do have active in our areas for now. But I think the network of building something is going to be harder, but maybe easier with AI, right? Like, everything seems easier with AI today, but being able to get our information out there and just keep sharing it, because that's where you're going to pick up people that can make a difference too, and keep networking and building our networks to be able to share that information. So I don't know that there's a way to get the data specifically out there, but I think we have to keep sharing it, because doing nothing with it is serving us no way. Like, there's no way that that's going to serve us, our future, the patients, the providers that are burnt out. Like, I just don't know that keeping it is helping us either.
Yeah, I think the one interesting thing, if you and I were going to start a convenience store, like we can go and we can find out what gas prices are going to be like and how we can look at the margins there, what we're going to have with the front end merchandise that we're going to sell, like in general. It's very interesting right now starting a pharmacy clinical service. If you're going to go cash based, you might be able to find some like ballpark areas, right, of
Right.
what you're going to charge for cash. If you're going to charge on an insurance fee for service basis, it's really easy to find out. Basically, you can charge for nothing yourself.
Right.
Everything has to go through incident to billing, which is something that you're an expert in, is really leveraged. But I think that the one interesting thing for us is that because there isn't a starting point, The one thing that has to be standardized is the data elements that we're pulling in. And I know that we're running up on time. So in a future episode, everybody's tuning in. If you have any questions, shoot them our way for Thea and I. But Thea and I will start covering some of the things that are really trickling down the entire CMS flow of what are the data points that are being measured? Like, what are the foundational elements, like the universal foundational elements of value-based care and these metrics that are being looked at? And why should we start focusing ourselves on at least pulling those metrics in and some of the different models of payment so we can help our colleagues to be able to reciprocate or replicate, excuse me, those exact same steps to be able to get the access. I think there are quality elements have to be put in place, Thea, but the one piece that I really think that has to happen for us is, like you mentioned with AI. AI cannot work well without standardized data. Like, it has to have a feed of information, to be able to get it to validate it in general. And I don't think we have that standardized input of info right now.
Yeah.
And if we do, somebody that's watching or listening right now, please hit us up and let us know that all that info that we can drop in. But you and I can go in a later episode and kind of detail out, here's what CMS is asking for. Like, here's what they're asking from a provider standpoint, because I feel like that's one thing pharmacists have to start doing is we can't just read pharmacy related rules, right? All the rules and regs that are pharmacy based, we have to know, right? We have to breathe, et cetera. But we have to start looking at what are primary care providers and care organizations being tasked to do. So how can we fit and play a role in it? I know it's a little bit more research, but that's what we're good at.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly where I found a way into the physician's office is just because of that, because I realized that the hurdles that they were having are hurdles that the pharmacy has had for several years now. And being able to talk about those things to the providers has opened doors. And maybe it's just that far, but after 5, 10, 15 emails, that leverage just went, and they're willing to have a luncheon with me to talk more and share what I know and share my knowledge and my service line with them. And so I think it's a starting point of getting out there and really just sharing about it once you do understand that it is actually not much different than the pharmacy world after all, but knowing what it is and being able to speak at it is a huge aspect of being able to offer more as a pharmacist.
Yeah, I love that. So I guess parting words for me, Thea, are really get behind ECAPS. I think look into it, recognize, yes, it is limited, but it is a step. And I think a really important step that my mind has just very recently, within the last hour, been changed on to say, we need to get behind things that can give us very gradual steps in and utilize the leverage that we already have in place to make things happen for our profession. And the other piece is, if you are doing these types of services and able to share them, I've got a great place at RPH Ally that you can start sharing these things together. You can hit up on the remote care services channel, be able to say, here are the things that I'm doing and tracking and evaluating and charging, and be able to help out all your other fellow pharmacists. They're trying to do very similar things, because those inroads, I think, are difficult to make without a couple pioneers to blaze it.
Yeah, I think so too, Kevin. I think there's a lot of help and support within RPHLA and a lot of different organizations, but I think just being able to share your information and don't go it alone is the easiest one to make moves.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you, Thea, as always, for your wisdom, and we'll talk to you guys all next week.
See
Bye.
ya.